as I want to do, I made like a story map on my whiteboard, completely old school. First of all, in Hellevator, it seems like we start out in hell. They're in this building, I said in my reaction video, like this very familiar space, this circular space that it turns out the reason I said it's been in lots of music videos, and the reason that I know it so well is because it's the space used in One Us's To Be or Not to Be, which is also like a lore setup heavy video. So there's something about this space that is very rich for potential like larger storylines and themes. I mean, the circularity that I talked about and all the upward rising lines and everything, I could definitely see how it has a kind of primal and epic vibe to it. Anyway, so they start off in hell, which is this sort of rundown, circular yet church-like building. The themes in this initial section, we see them mostly alone initially. And the lyrics suggest that they're struggling in hell, they're trapped, they're alone, they're isolated. And here, like, we could read hell as youth and adolescence, or we could read it more specifically as like the trainee experience. In either case, you don't have control. There's all these social norms and expectations. You're trapped in an educational system that may not have your best or personal interests at heart. And there are certainly some like lyrics later on that seem to make it be specifically about the pursuit of being a musician, of being an artist, of being a singer, and how society will give you messages not to do that, and how hard it is to fight on when you're hitting a lot of walls and also being told that the path you're on is wrong and that you're not going to succeed at it. So that seems pretty explicit in the lyrics, and that seems to be the space of hell. But in hell, there's this elevator, this Hellevator. There's this idea that they're sort of trapped on this journey between these two poles, between hell and, as someone pointed out in the comments, thank you, heaven, the other possible H word here. And they're trapped between these two poles, but the elevator, or they're trapped in hell, but the elevator gives them access both down and up. But because they're fighting with determination to get, and someone pointed out, red is connected to determination. So the glowing red here is their like fight, their fire to push out of hell upwards to heaven. So you hit H, and maybe that means heaven, and end up in this field where you're collectively together, where they are collectively together. I don't know why I suddenly started talking in second person. Maybe that's like the game theory part there, kind of naturally sneaking in. But so you're in this feel, this open space. It's beautiful compared to the kind of trapped limits. It's spacious. They're running free, and then there's joy in that running and in that collectivity. So that's like sort of on this one level, that's very clear. You're going, here's hell, and there's the elevator that goes between heaven and hell. And if you get on the elevator through your determination and fight through, you can reach heaven, the field. But it is not that simple. Let's look at how it's more complicated. The most resounding clue that it's not that simple is the image at the very end. Like if you missed it and it just kind of seemed like they're escaping hell and moving upwards together, because that's sort of the simple read of a very simple narrative arc that you could definitely take away the first time you watch the video, and I kind of did. But that final image where suddenly there's this like hellish cityscape hanging upside down over the field that is promising freedom and collectivity, that's like a sign that there's something more complicated going on here. So people mentioned in the comments that this is sort of the start of the alternate universe narrative that was so clearly laid out in Megaverse, which was my very first reaction video for Stray Kids. And so here we actually have two representations of Stray Kids, like two universes, two narratives playing out in different ways. We've got the Stray Kids who are in hell and fighting with all of these same themes: alienation, the struggle of being a teenager, of adolescence, or a young adult, sort of fighting for your career, fighting for your dream, fighting for your goals, the trainee experience, and fighting against like the restrictions of the educational system and everyone's expectations. So we have that, but One version of Stray Kids is finding the power to get through that through collectivity, and they're the ones who are actually having joy and fun, and we see like them playing with each other while still in hell. We see that joy and strength that they find through collectivity that one would assume is letting them get survive through this hell, but maybe is also lessening their determination to fight their way out of it. And the other stray kids are isolated and alone all the way up in the elevator until they get out. And I had noticed how their eye lines are going in all different ways in that elevator shot. And so this would be the isolated, alienated stray kids who are only going to find collectivity once they're released. We have these two narrative paths that are being set through the intercutting here, and these cues that there's these kind of two different realities happening at once. Then, and I wouldn't have picked up on this. I just really don't think I would have picked up on it on my own if people hadn't told me. But then there's the fact that there are two Hans, and that, well, there's two of everyone, but that Han switches from the from like the cheery group to the struggling group, so that the Hans switch, I believe. Again, this is sort of like cheating, because again, I don't think I would have gotten this on my own from this video, but I'd heard whispers of it, and I read a little bit more, and folks tipped me off on this. But so that suggests that not only are there these two alternative universe narratives that are essentially different ways of coping with the stress of adolescence and the demands of trying to pursue your dreams, but that you can move from one to the other. So that's both like thematic. You can choose to get off one path and one attitude for another. But it also, does suggest this sense that the universes can connect in a sort of more alternate universe, megaverse kind of setup, right? Then all of this makes that final image of hell and heaven, like the hell of the cityscape over the heaven of the field, make more sense, because that's the juxtaposition of the two universes. One, the darker version, where they're still kind of stuck in confined urban reality, and it's upside down, and the other where they're freed, but they are being trapped by the existence of this other potential alternative universe. And I suppose that they're connected to that universe by the fact that there's been this like member switch. Yeah, so that's a kind of fascinating setup for an alternative universe lore, which I know is what unfolds. And then people pointed out the game theory potential, or the reading of this as a video game. I feel like I totally can see that. I can see how they're kind of playing through the game in different ways, and you can switch at different points. I don't yet see how that's like actually substantially different from the alternative universe narrative, because if you're playing a video game, that kind of plays out the potential for different ways to work your way through a storyline, and they kind of all can coexist conceptually together. So I think I'll need to see more how that plays out, and if we're given some more clues that this is really like actually gameplay. It's super interesting. I'd like to see if that gets more concretely played out. So I'm eager to keep going and see which of these threads goes where. For my ADHD brain, I crave complexity, which is why I love really messy and interesting and confusing lore, but then I also somehow want to spell it out like very slowly in order. And this kind of mind mapping helps me. So I hope maybe you found it interesting. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And I will be back with the next installment of my explorations of the Stray Kids lore.